they get themselves too stressed out without having a clear path. Like I said, without having the timeline, there's the possibility of, 4 months out, all of a sudden people are like, well, what are we doing about food? What are we doing about drinks? And it's like,
through the halls of memories, the strokes of history, capturing humanity. Stories left untold, whispers of the past, secrets they withhold. Yeah, yeah. Oh, 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 oh. The condition reward.
I've noticed you guys do a lot of events. Is
yeah.
that like the main way that you get the name out there to the community?
So funny, I'll start with talking about myself.
Good.
I have an event background. When I went to college, I was in the hospitality um, major and marketing and hospitality. And from there, my first job out of college was with an event production company.
Yeah.
Then I guess I've just always done events, and that's my comfort zone. That's what I know how to do. And personally, from a marketing brain, it gets people excited to come on property, even if they're not super excited about your mission.
Yeah.
They're excited for a theme, they're excited for an event. And then
They're excited about happy hour.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then they'll come and grow to love what you're doing because it's
That's
like,
smart.
oh, this is a fun event. And I mean, I feel like I've done that before where I didn't know very much about an organization. And then I went to their, you know, tea party or something. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden I'm like, this is a great organization. And you get more involved that way.
So
Um,
was Stranahan Museum doing this before you got there, and then you brought your expertise?
Not so much. So I would say when I started here, it was very much, we were in a tough position as a museum. We had really, got hit hard by COVID for about a year and a half. And then right as COVID was lifting, there was this huge construction project that took place directly outside our fences for almost 2 years.
Oh, wow.
And it limited access to our property. So, there were people who, even when I started here, they're like, Stranahan House, I thought that place was closed.
Oh,
Um, so it was very much an organization that was in desperate need of a revamp, of more people to come on property, to remember us, to learn about us. So when I started, that was my first thing, is that, okay, let's get these events going, because that gets people on property, and that's the important thing. When people are walking by and they see a fun event, people enjoying themselves, they go, what is that? They ask
yeah,
themselves, they Google it, they ask others, and you go from there.
yeah. So, I mean, that's a pretty interesting way to market a museum.
It's-
It
it
really is.
Yeah, I would say that it was something that I had mentioned in my interviews with the board prior to me starting. Is I said I think that there's a need for events and life on the property, and they liked it. And even though I didn't have any museum operational experience prior to, they trusted that I was going to at least do something with my plans.
That's
But so far, we've almost quadrupled our membership.
wow.
And then we've increased our revenue by about 30% from the first year that I was here. So
Wow. So you really turned this place around.
I'm trying. I'm trying.
I think you're succeeding. Actually, talking about membership, one thing I saw that was very interesting is that your organization is part of the Time Travelers Network.
Yeah.
I love that name. And it's like, I guess if people become members of your organization, they can then go to others around the country, like free and discounted.
Yeah, and it's funny, I did not know about this until I started here. And then somebody had asked me, are you part of Time Travelers? And so one of my employees had like researched it and she's like, this is really cool. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is really cool. So we were excited to be a part of that.
I love that. And as soon as I heard that name, I thought it'd be hilarious if on the Time Travelers website, if it's like, we have a discount on membership yesterday only, just for time travelers. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
marketing right there.
Membership available tomorrow.
And I know you used to work at a hotel,
hmm
and then you were in marketing,
Yeah.
right? And then you were a teacher.
Yeah.
I know everything.
Okay.
And then here's the one thing that I think is most interesting. I think you still do run a food tour company in Mexico City.
I unfortunately have not given that thing my love or attention in the past couple of
Yeah,
years.
sure. But I mean, that's amazing that you even did that.
Yeah, yeah. So that can also get traced back. My first ever job out of college was an event production company, and it was an international event production company. So when I got hired on, my boss was from the Netherlands, and my counterpart was English, and my graphic designer was Cypriot. And every single person I worked with was from a different part of the world
Yeah.
and spoke multiple languages and lived multiple places and just had, multiple lives. And I just felt like just the most stereotypical American. I'm like, I speak English,
Yeah.
live in America, that's
Yeah.
it. Like, so I was with that company for a few years, and then from there, I just decided that, in your early 20s, that's the time you got to travel and you got to get out. Because certainly now that I'm married with kids, it's not the time for me to move to Mexico anymore. Uh, although sometimes I want to.
Yeah.
Uh, so I would say that, that was kind of my sink or swim moment. So I moved to Mexico,
Wow.
and by being called a teacher, I just think that anytime an American moves somewhere, they can easily get hired on and get paid to teach English. So
Okay.
I'm certainly never a teacher.
Okay.
So I worked to help uh, people in the area learn idiomatic expressions, specifically like businessese. When we
Yeah.
say things like, I'll circle back with you, most people outside the States have no idea what that means. So
Okay.
but then from there, I was like, what am I passionate about? And at the time, I was passionate about learning where I was at and the food. And, being again an American, you don't actually realize what real Mexican food is. You eat a
What do you
burrito.
mean? It's not Taco Bell?
No, not
No,
quite.
it's not.
Yeah,
Okay.
you eat a burrito or a quesadilla and you're like, oh, this is Mexican. And it's like,
Yeah.
nope, that doesn't exist in Mexico. So,
Really? Quesadillas don't exist in Mexico.
no, if you ordered a quesadilla, usually people say we don't have it. And the few places that they do have it, it's not what you would expect a quesadilla to look like. It
Wow.
comes
So
out
that's
in
an
its own.
American thing?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And you say
So,
anything about burritos?
yeah, burritos
Wow.
don't exist.
Wow.
You would never put your rice or beans inside your tortilla. Also, for that matter, very rarely do you find flour tortillas in Mexico. It's always corn tortillas.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like I've lived a lie.
Yeah, so that was exactly it, is when I started learning all of this and feeling, like, how did I not know any of this?
Yeah.
That was what started my tour company of catering to Americans and Europeans of, this is what you think Mexican food is, but this is what actually Mexican food is.
Wow.
And, walking them through the the market there of teaching them how you would buy the food or you would find the food. And that could be really intimidating for somebody who is a tourist because you hear
Sure.
about getting sick, especially in Mexico, and the water and the this and the that. So being led by a fellow, expat, it would put people at ease a little bit more.
Wow. How long did you live there?
I lived there for about a year and a half. And then I just got really homesick. So I was able to travel while in Mexico to Central and South America as well. But after a while, I missed home.
Yeah, and was home always Fort Lauderdale for you?
Actually, no, home was Chicago for a
Oh
very
wow.
long time. Yeah, and then very shortly after moving back from Mexico, I met my now husband on vacation, and we started a long distance relationship. So I moved to Fort Lauderdale to be with him.
Do you miss the snow?
No, but my husband does.
Oh God, I can't deal with snow at all. It's crazy.
I actually, now I would say I always prefer to be colder than like too cold than too warm.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So
Wow.
probably not a good idea that I live in Florida, but
Right.
I would always rather, like, I feel like I can put on more blankets or more jackets or what have you, but when you're
Yeah,
too hot, there's only so much you can do.
that's true. That's true. Can we take a look at your website?
Sure.
Let me move you over here. Okay, so this is the house.
Yes, it is.
Wow.
It's glory.
So now, I guess because of the way the website's made, there's actually water in front of it, like down here.
Yes. Yeah, so that's the New River. And the whole reason the house was built there is because um, if you've ever been to the Everglades or seen photos of the Everglades, that's what it looked like here 120 years ago. This was part of the Everglades of sorts. So it was so difficult to travel by land because of just the wilderness, that everybody traveled by water. So the front of the house, it sits on water. And so back then you would actually take your boat and pretty much dock at the front porch and get off your boat and get into the house.
Okay, because this is, and I think I saw this on your website, one of the oldest structures in Broward County, right?
It is. It's the oldest structure of Fort Lauderdale and Broward County,
Wow.
built in 1901, which it's funny whenever we have like a European tourist, they're like, 1901 is your history.
Right.
And so, but it is, it was swampland. So yes, so we try to preserve the history of Fort Lauderdale and Broward County, as well as Frank and Ivy Stranahan, who several people, well, most of us believe are the founding family of Fort Lauderdale. So
I did see
Frank
that.
was an entrepreneur and did so much, and Ivy was a teacher and an activist and did so much. So
Yeah. I was going to ask that because I saw that Ivy was a school teacher and I was wondering where did all this money come from? Because I'd imagine back in 1901, that was very, very, I mean, probably very expensive today. I can imagine back then.
yeah. So in terms of where did Frank and Ivy's money come from, they both came from working class families. They didn't really come from very much. So Frank moved from Ohio, and he was helping his cousin run. At the time, there was a stagecoach line, which is essentially just a wagon that takes you from point A to point B back and forth, because there was no train or anything like that.
Yeah.
And the halfway point from what is nowadays like West Palm to what is nowadays Miami was Fort Lauderdale, was right here. So his cousin created a campsite right here next to the river, and Frank came to operate that campsite and operate the ferry to take people across the water.
Okay.
The New River is actually incredibly deep. And so at the time they were like, there's no way that they had the technology to build a bridge because they couldn't go that deep. So he had to create this ferry to take people back and forth.
Hmm.
And the first bridge wasn't actually built here until the mid-20s.
Wow.
Because the technology wasn't there until then.
Yeah.
And so Frank was actually originally he was operating this campsite further east. And the Brickles, if you're familiar with the Brickle family, they were a very wealthy family. There's now the most posh area of Miami is called Brickell.
Okay.
And so the Brickell family owned all of the land east of us, and they didn't want Frank on their property. So they said, we'll just give you 10 acres of land at the edge of our property if you just get off our property.
Just leave.
Right. So he was gifted 10 acres of land, which is now pretty much the entirety of downtown Fort Lauderdale was owned outright by Frank for free.
Oh, that's a good deal.
I know. So from there, that's actually where the wealth started because Frank did so much with that 10 acres of land. Sometimes he would donate it to churches, hospitals, schools. And then sometimes he would use it to, he invested in building one of the first hotels in the area. He built one of the first banks. And so we consider him to be the first entrepreneur of Fort Lauderdale. And so he just continuously did a lot with that. He became one of the first developers in the area. So he developed a lot with the land. And he and Ivy became quite wealthy with all that he did with that land.
Wow. That's a great story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he lived here. Him and his wife lived here.
Yeah. So in 1901, there was another structure here and the campsite, but they ended up actually removing all of that and then building the structure that is now here today.
Okay.
So they built it, and they actually did not live there when it was first built. The first floor was the trading post, and the second floor was the community center of Fort Lauderdale. And so the trading post was owned and operated by Frank and Ivy, and their biggest customers were the Seminoles, who would canoe from the Everglades up the New River and then come to trade with Frank because they actually trusted him a lot more than a lot of the other white settlers.
Yeah.
And they grew a nice, strong bond with both Frank and Ivy for various reasons. And but then in 1906, Frank decided to move the trading post down to the Himarchi district, which is more of the traditional historic part of our downtown.
Yeah.
And they moved into the first floor of the house, and the second floor was still the community center. And then in 1915, they converted the entire place into a single family home.
And then I saw on your website that was also a post office and a town hall. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah. So he was the first, he was technically the first postmaster. And Frank is actually credited with naming Fort Lauderdale, because when he opened the post office, you have to obviously have a name for the post office, right? And in the 1800s, during the Seminole Wars, the United States built forts down here during war times, and one of the forts was called Fort Lauderdale. And for that reason, Frank essentially looked at a map and said, well, it's called Fort Lauderdale. And so he called the place Fort Lauderdale. So
that's amazing.
From a place to a city.
I guess. This guy sounds incredibly. Sounds like the Elon Musk of 100-something years ago.
Yeah, I don't know if he really he had some really great ideas. I don't know if he was necessarily the inventor.
Right.
He was pretty cool because we find that he has a lot of connections that we never knew. So directly next to us is one of the oldest, or it's the oldest hotel in Fort Lauderdale. It's called Riverside Hotel. And the family who runs it, they're a really lovely family. They were originally in Chicago. So what would have brought their family down here in the early 1900s to build the hotel? Well, we come to find out that in an effort to get more people to come to Fort Lauderdale, they Frank started to advertise out for sports fishing.
Okay.
And he brought in a guy who was an expert in sports fishing, and so that family from the Riverside Hotel really enjoyed doing it, and they would come to Fort Lauderdale so often to do sports fishing that they ended up moving down here, opening the hotel, and then a lot of other businesses in the area. So
Wow.
we can be like, wow, because of Frank Stranahan, all these other things happened. So
Yeah. This guy's a superstar.
yeah, he's
Uh,
pretty cool.
let's go back here. So over here on the right-hand side, is this the hotel you're talking about? I can't remember.
Yes, exactly. That's the Riverside.
Okay, I'm just trying to move it. Yeah, oh yeah. This is it kind of green and like wooden structure? Is that what I'm looking at?
Yeah, it's faux wood, but yes.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. Let me just come down here. Who's this?
So that's Ivy. So
Oh,
Ivy lived much longer life than Frank. So even though Frank was a very accomplished man, more often than not, all of our talks end up talking more about Ivy. Um, Something that any Floridian can thank Ivy Stranahan for is the Homestead Exemption Act.
oh, I like her. She did that.
She was the one who she was seeing in the Depression how everybody kept losing their homes.
Yeah,
And so she advocated and fought for them as hard as she could. And she brought homestead exemption to Floridians.
that's
Uh,
amazing.
yeah. So to this day, we can all thank her for her work. But even in the early 1900s, she was kind of a trailblazer. She loved animals, and one of the big trades of the time was the plume trade, the large feathers you would get from egrets and
Sure.
uh, other birds. And she started to realize that a lot of the times it was people were going out and killing these birds for nothing more than their feathers, and they started, these different types of birds were starting to die out just so that people could make their hats look nice. Um, and so she had asked Frank, her husband, to no longer, and this was obviously a huge trade at the time, but she had asked him to no longer trade and sell plumes in his trading post. And he agreed to it. And then she would fight for animal rights, 120 years ago when nobody ever thought about animal rights.
Yeah.
And she was a suffragette, and so she actually was the head of the group who got women's votes to Florida 2 years before it was a national amendment.
If something bad happens to one of your Premium 42 Kites devices, we'll send you a new one at no cost. Even if it gets eaten by a kangaroo. They can be mean. Only at 42kites.com.
So I could just go on and on about how cool Ivy was, but she
guess.
was definitely a woman ahead of her time.
Yeah.
She-
It's interesting to know that even back then, women lived longer than men. Because that happens.
right. Well, the reason that she lived so much longer than Frank, well, first off, Frank and her had about is it a 15-year age difference? About no, 17-year age difference. So he was much older than her, but also Frank actually took his own life in 1929. And so she lived until 1971. So she lived, 50 years without him.
Wow. All right. Let's go back over here. So this picture right here,
Mm-hmm.
is this the trading post? Is that what I'm looking at?
Yeah, so that is the first structure that stood on this property. So it no longer exists because this photo was taken in the 1800s.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's see what else we got here. So that's the new building, well, the one that you're in.
Yeah, and that photo we know was done in 1913 because to the right you can see that tower that's sitting over there, which
Yeah.
powered electricity. They had the wind, I can't remember the exact terminology, but wind powered electricity to the house for 2 years before what is now FPNL came in and brought electricity to everybody.
Yeah. I also noticed there's not giant, buildings behind it like there is today.
No, slightly different, slightly
Yeah,
different.
a little bit. Yeah. And then I also noticed, I know you don't do this anymore, but you have had ghost tours
Yeah, we
because
did.
I guess a lot of people died. And I guess you were just telling me that Frank died.
Yes.
Did he off himself in the property?
Just out front, he actually tied a grate to his legs and jumped into the river. And as I had mentioned, the river was quite deep, so
Wow.
by the time they were able to actually bring him up, he had passed.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of question marks as to why he was ill. They did realize that he had prostate cancer. They were in the middle of the depression, obviously, so he was losing a lot of money. A huge thing was in 1926, a devastating hurricane came through, and all of the land he was developing, and all the buildings he was putting together, and all the investors he had, everybody lost their shirts in 1926.
Yeah.
It was really hard on him, but he was going to power through and make it all good again. And so for 2 years, he worked and worked and worked and started to put all these things together. And then another absolutely devastating hurricane came through in 1928. Yeah, so there's a lot of question marks as to why did he do it. We don't actually know, but there's a lot of reasons he could have chosen to take his life.
Maybe because his wife didn't want him to sell feathers anymore. That
I mean,
might
he
have
was losing out on a lot of money there, so who
been.
knows?
He's got that feather money.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's go back here. Yeah, but I
But
guess I guess you get. And I saw over here that people would ask to sleep in the house.
yes, we
What's down
have
here?
we have a lot of people who request to sleep in the house. So the thing is that prior to me starting, there was a lot of buzz around the ghost tours. But if you see, really the only time that we ever got a poor Google review or TripAdvisor review is because people were coming to the house ready to be scared at a ghost tour.
Right.
And really, at the end of the day, the 6 people we know of that passed away on property, well, the 5 people who passed away in the house all did so peacefully. And
Okay.
Frank obviously took his life outside of the property.
Right.
Um, and so people would constantly be like, well, I was scared. I was looking to be scared. I was looking to have some sort of experience, and they would come and just get a history lesson. And so many people just seem to be frustrated with that.
Right.
And it doesn't really fit our mission anyways, because it's very gimmicky, and
Yeah.
that's not what we're about.
Yeah. No,
Um,
that's smart. I mean, to take control of your brand,
yeah,
not
and
have it
that
associated with us. I
is
get
exactly what it was.
it.
There was just, we knew we weren't going to give people the entertainment they wanted, and so we just decided, let's find different avenues to entertain people.
Yeah. No, that's smart. So 1901 Circle, that's the name of your membership? Is
So
that what
that
it
is our lifetime membership. So
is?
since the house was built in 1901, our highest level membership is for $1,901.
Okay. Oh,
And
forever.
so that gives you a lifetime membership to the museum. And so we do fun little things to go with that. Like you get a brick paved at the front of the house, and you
Sure.
get to plant a tree, and you get to rent out the property for a couple hours,
Nice.
fun little things that are exciting for our bigger donors.
Yeah. Here's a marketing or payment plan question. Um, do you see most people that do this go for the monthly option?
No, actually, the people, I would say more often than not, people just pay outright,
Okay.
the full amount. But the people who've chosen to do the plans tend to choose the quarterly.
Quarterly. Okay.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
that's actually, because right now we're also doing a capital improvement project, and it's the
yes, we'll talk about
thing
that.
is there's a lot of people who have chosen to do quarterly payouts.
Okay. Because I was talking to another museum and he said he had the most success with a monthly membership as opposed to yearly or quarterly. Monthly work for him. I was just wondering if that was the case with you, but I guess not.
Yeah, no, you would think because when you're trying to like justify spending a large sum of money, it does make sense to be like, oh, it's only $50 a month. I can do that.
Right.
But no, for us, I've either noticed that people just want to just hand you the money and be done with it, or their quarterly seems to work well for people 4 times a
Yeah.
year. So
Yeah. More money for you up front, right?
yeah.
And then, like I said, you guys do a lot of events, obviously, with your background. I know this is tomorrow.
Yep.
Which one is your personal favorite?
Um, I have to say that I do have affection for the Founding Families Fall Festival.
That's good.
That was an event that I kind of created out
Okay.
of nothing, and truly like it came from our fiscal year is October 1 to September 30th, and I needed to find some extra money.
You needed some extra money at the end there, huh?
So right at the end of September of last year, I was like, well, we're gonna do a fundraising event. And I never expected it to be as successful as it was, but we had almost 500 people on property.
Oh.
There were a lot of families with kids, a lot of excitement. There was a lot of life. We actually had people come on property who used to be, high level donors that kind of fell off years ago. It was like a big surge of life into the house that people had not seen here for many years. And since then, it's really jump started, our Christmas events, all of them ended up being, I think, even more successful because people were excited to be back on property.
Sure.
Every one of our happy hours has sold out since then. So it was very exciting to see something that it started as, okay, I need to find money. And then it was like, well, I can't market an event that says
Give me money.
this money is called, or this event is called We Need Money.
Right.
So then it was kind of what do we do with this? And as I had mentioned, a lot of people credit Frank and Ivy as being founding families, but it wasn't just them. There are a lot of families out there who had significant impacts. As I was telling you the story, the story was that I was telling you about is of the Wells family, which is another prominent family in the area. And so our fall festival was honoring all these other families. We honored a family who helped build out some of the yachting industry here. We honored the family who was the first ever family to come in and start building all the bridges, because Fort Lauderdale is known as the Venice of the Americas because there's so many waterways, and so we have so many bridges here, and we can thank the Powell family for that. We honored the Rogers family who created the first and oldest law firm of Fort Lauderdale. So it was just we ended up as staff learning so much more history than just what we know about Stranahan.
Yeah.
And so we were just really excited to have that. And then those families were excited to be recognized. So it was just all positive. It was a really, really great event. And I'm excited to throw it again this year.
Yeah, it looks like you had, or you had, and I think are going to have food trucks, beer and wine, and games and live music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and two, it was a little bit harder last year finding vendors to sign up and people.
The first one, right? The first one.
Yeah, but now we actually have everybody's like, it was such a great event. I can't wait to come.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this is so much easier this time around.
Yeah, it's like everything else. The first time is always the hardest, and it gets easier.
Absolutely.
So with your event expertise, you obviously put this together, and it was a big success. are there some tips or is there planning or steps involved that you would recommend other museums that want to do something similar, what they should follow? Like what's step one? What's step two? Can you walk me through a few of them?
Sure. So for every event, it's different, right?
Sure.
But I always start with creating a timeline. And well, actually, the first thing I start with is the last year's event. Immediately after the event, I get everybody together, staff, volunteers, board members, and I say, what were all of the extreme positives that we need to make sure we do again? And so we create a list of these were all amazing things that people loved. We have to do it again.
Okay.
And then on the other side, what are the lessons that we learned that we can improve on?
Okay, that's smart.
And creating a spreadsheet, so that sure enough, back in September, I had this event and now I'm creating my timeline for the next event of these are all the steps I need to start taking. But I looked immediately at my lessons learned and I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot that, we had an issue with timing when the vendors were arriving because the gate wasn't open at the right time. And it's just like all these little logistic
Sure.
things. I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot. So this year we need to tell these vendors to come before these things
Yeah.
like that, which you completely forget until you're in the thick of it again and you're making the same mistake twice.
Yeah, I mean, learning from your mistakes, that's so important.
Yeah. So everybody on my staff and everybody who volunteers knows that Jenny wants her lessons learned. So we always do lessons learned. And then that's step one, right, of next year's event.
Step one, learn from what happened last year. We're going to do more of this and less of this.
Exactly.
Then what?
And then I now have created my entire timeline. My timeline's pretty basic. For right now, I just consider it like in the month of May, these are the tasks that need to be done. And then I assign them out to everybody because it's so important to ensure that everybody has accountability. Event production can be very tumultuous. It can be exhausting, exasperating, and there's so often when you're running around trying to get things done, things fall through the cracks. And so oftentimes there's somebody who's like, well, it was your job. Nuh-uh, it was your job. And so by having this timeline, listing when it needs to be done, what the task is and who it's assigned to always seems to really help us.
Okay. So
yeah.
Review last year's, come up with a new timeline. And so on this timeline, I'm assuming it's things like reach out to food truck vendors. Right.
So I would say that my first steps are always to secure funding. So for the fall festival, we actually use the park next door. So we need a permit for that. So that's the first thing I do. I want to ensure I have my permit, right?
Sure. Yeah.
The second thing is I start reaching out to sponsors because I can't put a successful event together unless I have money to do so.
Right.
And then truly when it comes to vendors, caterers, tables, chairs, flowers, yada, 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 you can usually secure all of that 2 to 3 months out. So it's actually not the first and most important thing when you're doing an event. It tends to be when you're doing fundraising events, you always want to ensure that you've got, proper co-chairs and a committee to help you. And then you've got to find your funding.
No, I think that makes sense. And things like the flowers and the chairs, those are all companies that you're giving money to. So they'll do whatever you want if you're paying them.
Right, exactly. Okay. So in that capacity, we always try and check that out. Now, also with the fall festival, besides, doing first reach outs to the sponsors, our initial reach outs are also to the families we are going to honor this year. So we did 5 last year. We're going to do 5 this year. So we want to sign them on and have them understand what, by them being honored, this is what's expected of them and what, we're doing for them and, that kind of thing. So those are essentially, it's just like a lot of emails and phone calls for the first, 2 months of any kind of event because you're just trying to get things secured, situated, and then as you get closer to an event, that's when the hands-on stuff becomes more and more and more frequent.
Okay. What software or applications do you use to manage? I know you said a spreadsheet. Is there anything else? Any other systems that you use? Or
I
apps
don't.
or anything?
I know that there's a lot of people that do, but so often, when it comes to nonprofit work, a lot of the volunteers are usually an older retired group.
Yeah.
So it tends to require more effort to teach them how to use those applications
Okay.
to just kind of do old school.
Yeah. So you keep it simple.
Hmm. I try.
That's
I
good.
try. When you overcomplicate things or try and add too much to it, it tends to always shoot yourself in the foot that way.
Right. Have you found that people do that when organizing events? Do they make them too complicated?
I think if you're not in the right mindset of I think people can overcomplicate them because they get themselves too stressed out without having a clear path, like I said, without having the timeline. There's the possibility of, 4 months out, all of a sudden people are like, well, what are we doing about food? What are we doing about drinks? And it's like, in July, we're securing all of that. We actually already have contact information. Like, this is what we always do. So like by having a concise plan ahead of you, you can stay calm. And it's just when people don't have that, that's when they get themselves stressed out and then overcomplicate it. Because too, if you do things too early, that could actually screw you up in the long run.
Okay. Yeah. That's good advice. Let's
Hmm.
go. Let's go back here. So here's your website. I actually wanted to go. I think it's on your Facebook page.
Hmm.
This right here. This is your capital improvement project. So
Yes.
what am I looking at? The build. Can I just guess?
Sure.
Okay. I'm guessing that this building right here. Let me click it. This building right here is the current building. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. And so you guys are trying to raise money to build all of this. Is that
Okay,
accurate?
so if you move your mouse up all the way to down a little, and then keep going down just a little further, and then to
Yep.
the right, just slightly,
Okay.
right there. That's
Yep.
where I'm sitting.
Okay.
So that is
So
where I am currently sitting because that building exists.
this one exists.
However,
Okay.
yes. However, it's only the half closest to the photo that exists. So we are building on to this event, to this building.
Okay. So
And
you're
we're
building this over here.
yes, exactly. So
Okay.
that over there is going to be a catering kitchen, a classroom. Then it becomes a second floor, which is storage and archival space. And then we have ADA compliant bathrooms being built because 40 years ago, they did not do a good job with ADA compliancy.
No, I don't imagine.
So that is what's being built on. So right now, this is our little administration building. And like I said, it's pretty much my office and then a few other desks and really not much else.
Sure.
So that is what we call our administration building. And it's going to be continued to be called the administration building, but it's going to hold a catering kitchen, education center, bathrooms, and second floor storage.
Now,
The
catering.
building that is brand new on the other side is going to be our welcome center. It's going to be a ticketing window.
So that's this right here?
Yes.
Okay.
So the rendering doesn't obviously show, but just to the left of that building is a park, a city-owned park just
Okay.
outside our property. And near that is our water taxi, which is pretty much like the go-to thing to do in the area when you're wanting to learn about the city. So we're going to kind of partner up with the city itself and water taxi and all of those organizations. And the Welcome Center is still Stranahan House Welcome Center, but we are going to help to, teach people about what other fun things there are to do in this area.
That's a pretty good deal. If the water taxi brings tourists and people to give you money right to your door.
Yeah, and vice versa. Yeah, they're a very good friend of ours. And so we just want to have a really strong camaraderie with them, as well as the city, as well as the Riverside Hotel. We try and stay close to all of our neighbors for various reasons, but all of us want each other to succeed.
Yeah. Is it like a specific name water taxi, or is it just the Fort Lauderdale water taxi?
It's literally, their name is water taxi.
Brilliant branding right there.
I know. So it is watertaxi.com. There
Water
is
taxi.
there is no Fort Lauderdale. So
Wow.
the owner of Water Taxi, he had a water taxi up in Boston, and then he moved his operations down here. But
Okay.
he's been doing it for a long time, so I think he got the name Water Taxi.
I guess. Yeah, that's a good name if you're gonna do that.
Yeah.
Let's go back here. Oh yeah, more rendering. So this is the Welcome Center, I guess?
So it's the back of the Welcome Center, which is the event pavilion. So right
Okay.
now what we have on property is a canvas canopy, which it's seen better days. It really needs it's run its course. So by us having this more permanent roof structure of an event pavilion, it's going to serve us better in the long run.
Okay, let me go to the next one.
And that's the front side of the Welcome Center.
Okay, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what?
So that's the administration building. And again, the window to the very, very, very right is the office I'm currently sitting in.
Right.
And so all of the left is the add-on of the catering kitchen to the classroom to the bathrooms, and then the second floor is the storage.
When your exhibits are outdoors and there is no electricity and no wall labels, how can you help guests explore those exhibits? The 42 Kites premium devices work great in sun-drenched meadows, rain-soaked trails, and snow-covered landscapes. They work anywhere you want them to. Only at 42kites.com.
So I'm guessing with your classroom, you guys are going to start offering glasses.
So, what we do currently have is about 3 to 5 days a week. We actually have field trips come on property.
Okay.
We've hit the Sunshine State Standard for 4th grade local history. So it is the state of Florida mandates it that 4th grade teachers must teach about local history. And so many of the Broward County schools like to come and learn about local history here. And we, within our field trips, check mark so many of the bullet points within that standard that, we're just kind of a go-to option for Fort Lauderdale and Broward County elementary schools.
Yeah.
So by us having a classroom, we will be able to increase the amount of kids we can have on property, because right now we have a limit. So we'll be able to have more kids per day, as well as we will have a much better option during the wet months when it's raining constantly here. Because right now we have them under this canopy, but sure enough, the wind whips in and they're all still getting a little bit wet.
Yeah.
So we'll have that, as well as we can rent out this space for other people to use it for education, or people can even use it for business purposes.
Yeah.
Certainly there's a lot of opportunity there by having an indoor option, because right now when the field trips come on property, they're outdoor the entire time except when they go in the historic structure to learn that component.
Yeah, that's really smart. I really like how the state of Florida says teachers have to teach this curriculum, and then you, the organization, check those boxes, and now you basically have the state government saying, teachers, you have to send people here, which is putting money in your pocket. Is that accurate?
So we have ensured that we are following the standards, correct?
And where did you find these standards? Is it on like the state's website?
Yeah.
Okay.
Easily, yeah, you can literally type in So I mean, this was knowledge that was had prior to my time here. So how the original person 20, 30 years ago found out about it, I don't know.
Sure.
But you can easily then type in Sunshine State Standards, local history, and it'll pop up with all the little bullet points.
Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah, so that's easy enough for us to look into and learn from. They ask that there be a Native American component, and we have so much information to share about the Seminoles because of the strong relationship between Frank and Ivy and the Seminoles. So that kind of, checks off a bunch of boxes as well. Yeah, so we just, because we're able to do that, our education manager has then reached out to the school system and said, hey, so like we're a very inexpensive field trip that helps you hit all of these bullet points, and so they've from there listed us as a preferred field trip.
Wow.
So do they force anybody to come to us?
No.
But is it
But it's a great scenario for
Yes.
your organization. That's awesome.
Absolutely. And now, mind you, we still will once in a while have a first grade class come, which obviously they were
Sure.
not doing any of the standards, but they're having fun, or we'll have a sixth or seventh grade class. Again, not the standards, but still a good time.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Mhm.
Let's go back here. So here we have the bazaar, live music. Is this another one of your creations?
So no, this is called the Sunny Side Up Market. We also are an event rental of sorts. So our venue is you can rent out. We've had a relationship with Sunny Side Up Market for years, and so they come once a month and they pay us a nominal fee to use the property for 3-4 hours right in the middle of the day
Yeah.
on the weekend, and it's always really just a beautiful event here. It brings people on property. It's just a very symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, that's great. So obviously this is your structure right here.
Yes.
Right? Okay. And you have all these, and so this market brings these vendors.
Yeah, they do.
Okay.
So it's very easy for us because they, just again, they pay us a flat fee to use the property, and then the woman who runs the market secures the vendors, and then she just lets us know they're going to start coming at 10 a.m. They're going to leave at 3 p.m. and we are ready for it.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, and there's that hotel that you were talking about, right?
Exactly. There's Riverside. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let me get at it. Let's go to your Instagram page. So I see this was obviously the capital. By the way, how much is that going to cost you guys? How much are you trying to raise?
So our goal right now is 2.7 million, and we've got about 1.7.
Wow, awesome.
Yeah, no, we're happy with where we're at. We
Yeah.
know that once people see the machines on property and the walls being built, we know that that's going to really be the charge we need to kind of finish up the monetary component.
Yeah, wow. So this is actually inside the historic structure, I'm assuming?
Yeah, so my education manager, I was lucky enough to bring her on about 5 months after I started here, and she's been doing a wonderful job reaching out to senior living facilities to bring them on property. That was just an untapped resource for us. Something that my grant writer had brought up to me is the concern for senior isolation over a year ago. That is a huge concern for a lot of people. And so we reach out to senior living facilities and kind of offer them a whole deal. We, come on over, park on our property, do a tour with us, then we put them on the water taxi for a bit. And then from there, they'll come back and then they get a discount over at the cafe directly across the way. And so they can have a nice little outing. It doesn't cost too much money. And then, after they're done, they can obviously grab because our parking is very ADA compliant, so they're easily on and off. And
Okay.
so, as you see in that photo, on a normal basis, you are not allowed to sit down in our museum. But when we have these senior living facilities, we bring in folding chairs to ensure that they're able to sit down.
Yeah.
Because certainly we don't want anybody sitting on the actual furniture in the house.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so we've been trying to make that happen, and we've been seeing a lot of those groups come through, which has been really wonderful. So a lot of the times you'll either see a much older crowd or a much younger crowd, because you'll either
Yeah, I was
have the
gonna say,
senior groups or the school children.
yes, you guys have not focused, but have managed to tap into two groups, the students and the seniors.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
great.
So when you think about it, who are the people who can come in the middle of the day to do, to come and visit? Because we have people come on weekends, obviously, but there's so often we're here in the middle of the day, and we want to ensure that there's people on property with us.
Yeah, wow. That's great. Two untapped markets right there.
Yeah, trying.
Yeah. Is this clothes that the family would wear? Is that what I'm looking at?
So that's actually so that is our sewing room. And the sewing room is dedicated to us talking about Ivy and her relationship with the Seminoles.
Okay.
So that is all patchwork that the Seminoles would have made after Ivy introduced them to her sewing machine, and Frank would then sell his sewing machines to them. But they would work synonymously. Before the Seminoles could afford their own sewing machines, they would come to the Stranahan House property and use the sewing machine that is literally sitting there, that the same exact
Wow.
sewing machine that's, I think, Frank bought it in 1894, so that 130 years old.
Wow. And that's what's behind this lady right here?
Exactly. Yeah, that is exactly. And it's impressive because he bought it for $3 on a mail order catalog.
Can't do that today.
Cannot, no.
No.
So it was things like that where the Seminoles were always welcome in Frank and Ivy's home, and they treated them like, equals, and they allowed them to use whatever they could. And so for that reason, the Seminole tribe found that they could trust their business dealings with Frank a little bit more than others.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. And now who's this?
So if you see in the far back, the tall woman, that's Ivy.
Okay.
So Ivy, the reason she moved to Fort Lauderdale was because after Frank had started to make something of this area, there finally was enough children in the area where they needed a schoolhouse. So the King family helped to build out a schoolhouse, and then they put an advertisement out. And Ivy, who was 18 at the time, took her little exam and became a certified school teacher at 18. So she moved to Fort Lauderdale, and this was her first ever class. So when she started teaching, she actually only had 9 students in total. And by the end of the 5-month teaching period, because the school year was only 5 months at the time,
Yeah.
she actually had 15 students. So this is the very end. That's a picture of the very end of the school year, where she ended up having 15 children in her class. And that was the only class that she ever taught, like, professionally, because after that she got married and she chose to quit teaching so she could help in the trading post. And while she was helping in the trading post, she would constantly be working with the Seminole children to teach them English. And so it became such a passion because she loved teaching. And so she would do that, but obviously she wasn't getting paid any money.
Yeah.
And so for that reason, they also started to trust Ivy, because they never thought that she was trying to push any of her beliefs on them. She was just genuinely attempting to teach them the English language to kind of help them, whether or not it be them going to school or what have you. But she was just trying to help.
Wow, that's really nice. Now you said she was 18
Mhm.
doing this? Wow.
Yeah, she was hired in 1899 to be the first ever school teacher, and she was born in 1881.
Wow, that's amazing. Let's go back here. So I'm assuming this is the couple?
This is Frank and Ivy, and this is much later in their marriage, towards the end of Frank's
1920s.
life.
Everybody used to dress up back in the day.
I know, I know. Well, and that was another one of Frank's many businesses. Is so right now we're on a road called Las Olas Boulevard, and Las Olas Boulevard runs through the main part of downtown Fort Lauderdale. And Las Olas Boulevard is like the place that you would go for like nice shops and nice food and all of that.
Yeah.
Las Olas runs all the way down to A1A. And Frank made sure to bring in a bridge company, the Powell family, to build a bridge that would take you over the intercoastal. And then, obviously that became A1A eventually. Yeah. But once you got over the intercoastal, right there, there's a park there now. But the first thing that Frank had put in is a changing pavilion. It was a multi-story changing pavilion because everybody would be fully dressed when they would go to the beach. And then when you arrived at the beach, you would then go and pay for a changing pavilion. You would go in and then put your bathing suit on there. And then when you were done at the beach, you would go and get yourself completely changed again and leave. Which is funny because now you just see people walking around in, tiny bikinis at like the grocery store.
I always wonder that, like when you see video footage of like the early 1900s, like all the guys like have suits on and fancy hats and women all have dresses. No. Why? I know that's not your area of expertise, but why was that the thing? Why did people dress like that?
I mean, you could ask that about literally any era. Like, why did everybody think that it looked good to feather their hair in the 80s?
Yeah,
there's all sorts of questions. And it's funny too, because I feel the same way. I'm like, why on earth would I spend all this time and effort to put a dress on and stockings and heels, especially when you were living in a swamp, right? So one of the things that we show all the kids, especially field trips, I mean, everybody, but especially the kids in the field trips are just, their faces are like, what? We show them spatter guards or spats. Do you know what spats are?
No idea.
Okay. I asked because in a lot of the gangster movies, you sometimes hear about spats. So spatter guards, like if this was your shoe, a spatter guard you would put on top of your shoe to block it from getting like dirt and whatever, like splattered all over it, right? Okay. So it's called a spatter guard. But I'm like, then why would you wear a nice shoe? But, so all these kids are just shocked because they're like, why would you go through, like for women, why would you put stockings on and then heels? And then you have to like outfit your entire heel with a spatter guard because of how much dirt there is.
Yeah. But I guess that stuff like that hasn't changed much because how many people are like obsessed with sneakers now and they buy sneakers and they just put it in their closet and don't ever wear them.
Right. Yeah. Or like, oh no, I can't run in those sneakers. And you're like,
right. Don't want to crease it.
Then why'd you just spend $200 on that?
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. So what is happening here?
So that was another event rental. So we rented out the venue and it was the coolest thing. They actually did the traveling hibachi. So somebody rented out our entire property and then had hibachi chefs come on property and do the whole cooking thing on our front patio for their people.
So that's what this is like the stove, right? Like
yeah. I believe the chef is probably just getting himself ready before he started. Or multiple chefs. I think they had like 2 or 3 chefs because there were so many people.
Wow.
But since then, we thought it was the coolest thing. So now we tell everybody about it. We're like, you guys got to rent out our property to do hibachi.
Absolutely. Now I know what you're planning on building. You're going to be building a catering kitchen, you said?
So yes, we are. The catering kitchen will be built on. So we have a very tiny kitchen right now in our administration building for like a staff kitchen. So this is obviously going to be a large increase and a much bigger utilized space for our catering kitchen.
And so, I mean, I know that you guys have a lot of vendors come in and bring their food and stuff. So what is this kitchen going to do? Is it going to eliminate the need for outside food vendors?
So no, we're never, well, I'm not gonna say never, but we have no intention of ever doing our own catering.
Okay.
So whenever the caterers come in, they will be able to use our kitchen versus right now when our caterers come on property, they kind of have to do a small build out of grills and warming stations and whatnot in our parking lot so they can better serve the food to the guests.
Okay. So you're building this to help these catering companies.
Exactly. Because too, right now, some of the smaller caterers can't necessarily come to our property if they don't have that build out available.
Right. No, that's smart. This, where do I get one of these?
So
Oh, good.
this was our fall festival last year. That was the biggest food truck I've ever seen in my entire life. It was called the Greek.
Yeah.
And they came in, and I mean, the amount of people who were just oohing and ahhing over their food, they
Yeah.
did an incredible job. So we're having them back again
Delicious.
for this fall festival.
Wow. And when is
Yeah.
the fall festival's in late September?
Late September. Yep.
Wow. Might need to show up. That looks amazing. So this is the marriage certificate.
It is. It's hanging up. The original is hanging up inside the house right next to the master bedroom.
Wow. That's cool. How do you guys acquire that?
So when Ivy passed away in 1971, she willed her house to the Seventh-day Adventists because that was her religion. But then she actually willed all of her property, like all of her items, to the Historical Society.
Okay.
Because she actually started the Historical Society.
Okay.
Or well, she helped start it. She wasn't the only one.
Yeah.
But her and a few others started the Fort Lauderdale Historical Society, which is now called History Fort Lauderdale.
Okay.
So in the 70s, the Historical Society, the Board of Realtors, and a bunch of individual donors got together and they purchased the Stranahan House property from the Seventh-day Adventists. And then they worked to fundraise for the renovation of the property. And then in the 80s, when they were just about finished with all the renovations, the Historical Society deeded Stranahan House to its own entity, in which we became Stranahan House Incorporated. And a lot of the items that we have are from Ivy herself, who she gave to the Historical Society, in which the Historical Society then
And gave to you.
loaned out to us. Yes.
Gotcha.
It was very cool because we'll have just the most random things inside the house that are like, no, this was actual, like Ivy was a very pious woman. So we have her actual handheld Bible on her nightstand in the house.
Wow. It's amazing how these things can stay intact for so long when preserved correctly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's funny too, because I say I'm somebody who is just so organized, probably to a fault, but I purge my house like crazy. Every 6 months to a year, I purge stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm like, there's no way I could ever actually have anything historical because I don't hold on to anything long enough.
Oh, so there won't be a Jennifer house 100 years from now?
Probably not. Probably not.
All right. So obviously I know what's next for the Stranahan House, your capital campaign. That's what you're pushing for. What's next for you?
This is kind of my Everest at this point. When I started about a year and a half ago, I didn't quite know what I was getting into. Very, very candidly,
Yeah.
I don't think I was sold the whole story.
Uh-oh.
And it's even a joke. The president of my board and I will even laugh about the fact that it was like, you guys did not tell me this when I signed on.
Yeah.
So I have been working really, really hard to bring some life back to the property, to, work on Stranahan House's name back out in the property because so often people have forgotten about us or just, stopped working with us for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So I've been building our relationships in the community again, building, the tours that are coming through. So I will just keep working on that, and I have every intention of being here and seeing the capital campaign come to fruition. And I have a strategic plan once the capital campaign has completed, probably bringing on more staff, other ideas. Um, so I plan to be here for the foreseeable future, but
That's great.
then who knows? Maybe there'll be another museum out there who will need a little bit of help and I can go do that again.
Yeah. I mean, it's great to hear how you've turned this museum around and really brought some life into it. I think that's awesome.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, no, it's been a challenge.
Sure.
Been an exciting challenge. I when I started here I was pregnant, and the day I got out of the hospital, I had to come into work to get a couple things done.
Wow. They run a tight ship, huh?
I
Jeez.
would never make an employee ever do that in a million years, but I myself, I was like, oh, I gave birth too early. I need to get back to work.
You set a high standard in your
Yeah,
organization.
so I certainly have been attempting to ensure that things are running smoothly.
Yeah, I think you're doing a good job.
Thank
So, is
you.
there anything that we've missed? Anything that we should talk about? Did
I
we
would
get it all?
say, I'll be honest, I was a little bit worried too because I don't know if you quite realized I don't have too long of a career. I've only been within, the working world for almost 14 years now. So out of college. So I don't, where some people are like, I have 40 years of experience. I do not.
But I mean, but think of what you've done so far, and obviously you haven't been at this organization that long, but even your time here, you've made a big impact.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I would say though, those are my that's kind of what's been going on with me for the last, 35 years. This is
Scenes from the next episode of The Condition Report.
Yeah.
But having someone moved by the work and think new thoughts and become more interested in the world because of the art, you're very vulnerable as an artist. And you're not selling socks.
No.
You're not selling a product. You're selling your heart, your soul.